Alright, I just posted a short video, a 1 minute one, because I think to me that's the best way I learn stuff myself, learn something small. And I used to have a teacher who'd always say less is more, and I didn't want to hear that when I was learning, but it's true. And usually don't worry when you're learning like theory stuff, at least what I found, don't worry about like all the notes and everything at once. Just sometimes you just need to learn how to do it and then start to learn about the notes. But I got a request to talk about triads. I should probably make like I can make an edited video and put things on the screen. But essentially what triads are, it's the three notes that are in a major or minor chord. And it's really basic concept. Every major and minor chord has three notes in it or a diminished chord. And the reason why you want to learn them is then it gives you much more control. Because instead of thinking of this shape like a G major as like a beginner is just going to notice this shape and maybe they don't even know about this shape or this or seeing that this is the same, or like someone more advanced realizes this is a G, this is a G, this is a G. And then there's different ways to think about it. But in terms of like why you want to do it, because you can start to control the voicing, you can solo off them, it gives you much more control. Like when I'm playing a G chord, I play this a lot, like that, or as a power chord. If you get rid of that, it's a power chord actually. Just a big one, which Nirvana uses a lot. But a lot of times I'm like, okay, I made up my song. And then you want to solo over it, you want to do something more interesting, and then you start to pull out triads. And if you know like there's a G here, or you could be. Or maybe do the top. All I'm doing is just doing little triads, and that's how it's like fun to explore. So what is a triad? It's just the three note shape that makes up the chord, and I'm only going to focus on G right now because I think like, you know, if you're asking the question, I'm assuming it's because you're trying to kind of understand what they are about. So a G major chord comes from the key of G major, which has 7 notes in it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then it starts over. 1. This is back to the 1. So the definition of a major chord is 1, 3, 5. So it's the 1, 2, 3. It's the 1, 3rd, and 5th note of the scale. 4, 5, and then you 6, 7, 1. So it's like this. You've probably heard that before, like beginner piano players. They play stuff like. That's just playing triads, okay? But so it's the 1, 3, 5, but the notes that you play in G are G, B, D. Okay, so that would be the triad for G. The first note, the 1, is G. The 3rd or the 3 of the G major is B, and the 5 is D. So like when I was learning guitar, I made flashcards, and I could make a video and show exactly what I did later and which flashcards I made. You do not have to memorize all 12 keys in music. That's just a waste of time. You want to memorize caged plus F and B flat, possibly an E flat. But like really, if you can learn C major, key of C major, G major, and then learn A major, E major, and D major, you'll be good. But if you're a beginner, like less is more, okay? Like this is what was always told to me. I didn't want to believe it, but it's true. And what I think is useful is actually to start just by learning the shape. That's why I did the 1 minute video. So being able to do like this. So for G, I think the most useful triads to learn first are on these 3 strings. D, G, and B, because I use those 3 strings more, and then I go up to the top string or I go down, because these kind of tend to be in the middle range. So you can still go up or you can go down and hit some bass. You have 2 notes for bass. You also have higher ones. If I use the top ones, it's more like because I'm trying to make a high melody. If I'm down here, it's either for like power chords or small shapes, or like a little riff. So if you learn it here first, I feel like it's most useful. And this is what I showed in my 1 minute video. What you want to do first is don't worry about the notes, but I'm going to get into that in a second. So all you got to do is memorize the shape. So it's 0, 0, 0. And then it's 5, 4, 3. And then it's 9, 7, 8. and then it's 12, 12, 12. And if you have an electric guitar, you could keep going. You could go. So it would be a 17. You would add 12 to everything. I tend to use my ear and feel. I don't really think as I go up further. And after a while, I just kind of know stuff. But learn how to do this first. And then go backwards. And so this shape is really easy to memorize. It's just like a straight up all open strings, or you can think of it if you did have to hold it down, like up here. It's just like a little rectangle that goes up. The next one is a staircase that just goes up to the left, like 5, 4, 3. It's very easy to remember. Just got to remember the 5th fret and you just make the staircase. This next shape's kind of hard. I tend to think of it as my middle finger, and then this one, and then this is like kind of like a minor looking shape, like E minor. In this case, it's a major chord, but I usually spot my middle finger on 8, and then I go think of this. At this point, it's kind of instantaneous, but I spot this because this is the root. So like, what it is, it's the top of a C shape. If you moved up the C shape for G. So I sometimes think about it like that, but a lot of times I'm more like, and I just think of it this, and then I put this shape below it, which is like a larger stair shape, and then up here, it's just flat, 12, 12, 12. So what I would do, I would not really think of what I'm about to go into next until you can do that if you've never done this before. Just to get familiarity, because then you'll start to hear this pattern, like. It's super useful because it's G major. It's like one of the most common. The guitar is almost tuned to a G major, E minor chord. So it's very useful, and it shows up in the keys of G and C, and then also in D, and then you can use it in other keys as well. Okay, so now I'm going to go into something more advanced, which is why are triads cool? It's because you can start to have different voicings of things. So what the voicing is, it's the order of the notes. So like, listen to this chord. This is a D major. It sounds like bright, but you can hold the F sharp and you could put the 3rd in the bass, and now it starts to sound like heavier somehow, like. Like more sad to me, so I tend not to do that unless I'm trying to make it sadder. And so why am I saying that? Because the power of triads is to control the voicing. So what does that mean? Well, it's what order you're putting the 1, 3, 5 in, right? So here, then you got to start to know the notes, and I would not overload your brain. So if you can't do the muscle memory, basic stuff at first, I would not go into this, but the notes here are D, G, B, okay? So when I started learning music theory for major and minor chords, I do it on my hand, because you only have to go up to the 5. It's very easy, and it also maps to the piano. I got out of piano when I was learning this stuff, and would do it on the piano. But the notes in a G major chord or scale are G, A, B, C, D. So the 1, let's say the 1's here, G, A, B, this is the 3, and this is the 5. So using your hands is useful later, because then you can remember what these are to worry about sus chords and minor chords. But I'm not going to go into that right now, but you could think, okay, so G is the 1, and then 2 would be A, which would be used for sus 2. Then the 3 is B, and then C is the 4, which would be as part of a sus 4 chord. And then the 5 is A, but all we care about is the 1, 3, and the 5, so G, A, B, C, D. And the reason why it's useful to do this is the guitar is like a weird instrument, because it's not like a piano. Like, it's basically like 6 staggered keyboards here is what you have. So then what you want to do is think, okay, so G, B, D. So what's the voicing here? Well, this started on D, and then G, and then B. So this is the 5. This is a 5, 1, and 3. So the 5 is the lowest note in this voicing of this chord. Which, why does that matter? Well, like later, if you start to extend it and do things, like if you wanted to put the 6 down here. Oops. Oops, sorry. It'd be right there, sorry. So this would be like, instead of 0, 0, 0, so then you can start to get more advanced. But the next step after you can do the muscle memory is what you want to do is think about what the notes are. And I wouldn't do this for every chord. I would pick just the most common ones, and I can make a video about it later. So it'd be like, and you could say the notes, and I used to have to write it out on like a blank fretboard. It would be like D, G, B. So you say like D, G, B, and then you go to the next one. This is G, B, D. Now this note is B, and this is D and G. And then it goes and repeats back. This is D, G, B. So then what you got to do is start to think, well, which of these voicings had the 1, which is G? As the lowest note, it's this one right here. I use this shape all the time, and then when you move it around, like if I move this triad to play like a C chord, the voicing stays the same. It's the 1, 3, 5. In this case, though, it's G, B, D, right? And then like over here, well, like what's the voicing? Well, this was a B, so this has the 3rd. So this is B, D, G. And so what I would do when I was learning triads is first you just got to learn the shapes and try to make up stuff with them. The cool thing with guitar is you can just move stuff around. You don't have to understand what you're doing. And I used to encourage my students to do that. Because like some of my friends don't even know any music theory. They were self-taught and they made up really cool stuff. So they would just play like... It didn't make sense music theory-wise, but it would be really interesting and cool. Because you can just slide shapes around. So when you learn these shapes, like if you've never done this before, just try. So that sounds cool to me. I just made it up by sliding the shape around. It's more interesting actually musically than if you make up songs using theory. But then, so here's how I would practice. First, you learn the shape. Next step is say the numbers, like, or say the notes. Sorry, the notes is next, and then the numbers, the tone numbers. So the notes here would be D, G, B, G, B, D, and you can print out a fretboard to know this. B, D, G, D, G, B, and then do that back and forth. You can go either way, and then the final step is to think, well, what's the scale number? And you might need to write it out. And it's going to be slow if you've never learned this before. But you got to remember G is the 1. G is the 1, then B, and then D. And your hand is useful for this kind of theory. G, A, B, C, D, G, B, D is the 1, 3, 5. So here I got D, which was the 5. So 5, 1, 3. Okay, and then 1, 3, 5. And then here, 3, 5, 1, and then the 5, 1, 3. And there's some tricks you can remember that help. So first of all, do not put pressure on yourself to know all this stuff right away. It's too much. But one thing that is helpful is the 5 is always below the 1. So like in this shape right here, the 1 is right here. I know this is a G string. The 5 is always below it. See that? So if you know the 1's here, you know the 5's below it, and that means the 3 is above it. And the 3 is up 1 and over to the left usually of the 1. It depends on if you're from the G to the B, everything slides over. But if you remember the 5 is below the 1, the 3 is above the 1, then it helps because then you're like, okay, I know this is G, it's the 1, and then the 3 would have to be above it, and then the 5. And then over here, if you're like, well, I don't remember what any of this is, but I know this note is G. That's usually what I spot. And spotting the 1s is very helpful. Then you go, well, the 5 must be here. That means this must be the 3 until like eventually it just becomes instantaneous and depends on which keys you play in and stuff. But like I showed in my 1-minute video, and that's the way I think is actually better to learn is in really small chunks and just learn stuff, is just to go. If you are more advanced, then the next step would be to start to try to play like the whole chord progression using triads. And I'm going to make a separate video on it, but I'm going to show it really quick. I'm not going to explain it because this video is getting long. But essentially, like what you do is you play like, I'm going to play open chord. G, C, D is the 1, 4, 5 in the key of G. So I'm going to go like. So that's the 1, 4, 5 in the key of G, because those are the chords built on the 1, 4, 5. Again, you can use your hand. If this is the 1 here, G, A, B, C, D. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So G is the 1, 2, 3, 4. This was G, A, B, C, and then D. So I use my hands a lot. There's more to it than that with other keys. You have to know the sharps and flats, but that's down here, okay? But now I'm going to use triads in this spot, and you try to stick on, you try to do it on the 3 strings that you've selected typically. So you'd be like, well, G is here. That's my G chord now, and then the next one I wanted was a C chord, so it's going to be right here. Notice you could see it if I do that, but it's just the middle of it, so I'm doing those 3. And then I'm going to do D. It's actually kind of weird. This wouldn't be it, because this wouldn't be the triad. It only would involve, this would be 1, 5, 1, so you got to put the 3rd here to make it a real triad. So that's a GCD chord down there, and this is, I'm showing this more so you know like where this leads to. If you've never seen triads, you do not want to think about the notes yet. You just got to put it into muscle memory, the basic shapes. And this is like the next step, but you can actually put this into muscle memory, and maybe I'll do some videos on it. But then the next one will be right here, G. Then I need a C chord, the 4, which is going to be right here. And then for the D, I'd probably slide up to there. It'd either have to be between that or this. I just use that shape though, so I guess I'll slide up. And then you go up to the next area, so this would be the G. The C shape that's closest, the closest triad that has the 1, 3, 5 in it, be right here. So it sounds so similar actually. And then for the D, I will do, I guess I'll just slide up to here because I used that one before. And that would be it. And there's so much you can do with triads. Like you could start to mix the triads and be like, and then you could go up. You could maybe go down. You could be like this. So like I had the whole chord progression was ascending the whole time, right? So that's what's cool is you can be like, well, I want my chords to ascend, or I want them to descend. Or you might be like, you know what, like I'm singing, I don't like the voicing of this, it doesn't feel right. So like, so maybe you want to put something else in the bass and see what it's doing. Or maybe you made up a riff and you want to incorporate the riff into your chords. Then you start to have the control to do this. But also you can also know like which notes you don't care about. So like if you're playing like, I made a 1-minute video for this, I think. Like I don't play bar chords most of the time. I just play the triad like this. I like to do like. And then if you know like, well, I know where the 3 is of that shape, then when I go down to here, like one trick I like to do is do like the 4 and make it minor. It's in tons of songs, but I just do it a lot when I'm messing around, so it's like. This is, I know, is a 3 and I'm flatting it. So I figured I'd make that video for like exposure, and if anybody has questions about it and wants more depth, I think what I could do is make short videos and actually edit them and put diagrams on the screen and stuff, because this is a hard topic. But what you don't want to do is feel overwhelmed. Like you got to learn the shapes, and then like I said, just mess around with them. And then I can show like how I did the theory. Early on, I made the mistake of trying to learn like all 12 keys, memorize all this stuff, and then I realized it doesn't need to be like that. Like it's not useful. Like almost most guitar songs are the keys of C, A, G caged, and that's for a reason. Like that's the shapes that the guitar you use in open position. And then sometimes people play an F or B flat or E flat. You'll see that. Some people play in different keys. Sometimes they're using a capo, so it's in a different key, but it's really not. It's still in caged. But anyway, that's a lot of information. So it was a request, and I figured I'd put it out there. And if anybody has any questions, let me know. Thanks.